I need you to hear this if you're an older man who still engages in masturbation, because hardly nobody informs you about it. In fact, it might be the one factor subtly reducing your sensitivity, confidence, and erection strength, because of the way you're doing it, not because you're doing it. Dr. Mohit Khera is my name. For the past 30 years, I have been assisting men over 60 in regaining their power, intimacy, and vitality, and I can assure you that this is among the most prevalent, yet least understood, problems I encounter on a weekly basis in my clinic. The majority of males think masturbation is either black or white, good or evil. The reality, however, is more nuanced and much more significant than you may imagine. Because although self-gratification might promote your health, if it is done improperly, it can also gradually erode your hormones, circulation, performance, and even relationships. I'll go over the 10 hidden dangers of masturbating beyond 60 that most doctors seldom mention in this video, and how to use this private habit to your advantage to strengthen testosterone, increase intimacy, improve blood flow, and protect your prostate. Before we wrap up, I'll also explain the all-natural 7-second method I use with my patients to help them regain their drive and firmness, powerfully, safely, and without a prescription. Let's get started because you deserve the truth for your confidence and wellness. Before we begin, please press the subscribe button if you haven't already, and press the bell to ensure you don't miss any crucial health information tailored to men in their 60s and beyond. Type 1 in the comments if this video resonates with you. Type 0 otherwise. I appreciate your input because it enables me to provide content that genuinely benefits you. Let's now discuss the portion that most men don't anticipate. The danger begins much deeper since it is not merely physical. I have witnessed innumerable men's emotional health being subtly weakened by the first concealed risk of masturbating over the age of 60. However, nobody alerts you to it. It has nothing to do with your physique. It has to do with how you relate to the world. Risk number 1. Social isolation. I recall having a patient seated across from me. He is 67 years old and a former high school teacher. His eyes had that silent expression, the weight that comes with being invisible rather than aging. He leaned in and whispered, "Doctor, I haven't touched another person in months, but I still take care of things on my own," after they had been chatting for a few minutes. That's bad. It wasn't the act itself that made me think about that question. Self-gratification is not intrinsically bad. In fact, it can be a beneficial aspect of a man's sexual life if done with balance and aim. What happens when it takes the place of intimacy instead of enhancing it is the issue. A lot of guys in their 60s, 70s, and even 80s start to settle into calm habits. A solo release turns into a solace, a routine, a means of experiencing something, even for a brief instant. They also gradually quit looking for connections with other people without even realizing it. Romantically, emotionally, and even socially, the void is filled by masturbation, until the opening turns into a canyon. It's not only about having sex, it has to do with the agonizing, insidious retreat from life, from embracing, laughing, making eye contact, and feeling like a man rather than merely a patient or an elderly person. I've witnessed men lose interest in dating, touching, and interacting because it's simpler to enjoy oneself alone than to confront the vulnerability of genuine connection. The truth is that not many people will speak it aloud. There's more to physical contact than just enjoyment. It's medication. It's what sustains your feeling of self-worth, testosterone levels, and emotional circuits. Your world begins to get smaller when you stop reaching out. You no longer think anyone wants what you still have to offer, not because you're getting older. So if you've seen yourself turning inside more and more, it's hardly a failure if your personal life has become your exclusive means of communication. It's an indication. Remind yourself that you are capable of more. And no matter how much time has passed, that more is still conceivable. It's not necessary to resume dating or pursue romance in order to reclaim that connection. calling an old acquaintance, joining a local group, or starting a discussion with a stranger can sometimes be the first step. Physical intimacy isn't the only kind. It's being heard, seen, and human once more. Because we begin to settle for seclusion under the pretext of independence the moment we lose the belief that we deserve intimacy. One hidden hazard is emotional distance, while the second one is more directly related to the body. Until it's too late, the majority of guys are unaware of the harm they're causing. Allow me to explain what it is and how to prevent it. Risk number 2, skin microlesions. A patient in his early 70s saw me a short time ago with a concern he was too ashamed to voice. "I felt irritation down there, Doc," he continued, You are aware. Also, it has been occurring more frequently recently. I could tell by the tone of his voice that he was truly concerned, but also a little embarrassed, as if this was something he ought to have outgrown by now. This is the reality. The penis's skin thins, gets more sensitive, and heals more slowly as we age. A portion of the body's youthful collagen and suppleness is lost. It's hardly surprising that many elderly men get what are known as microlesions when you combine that with decades of friction. Masturbation can cause tiny skin rips or abrasions, particularly if it is done too forcefully or without the right lubricant. At first, most men aren't even aware of it. For a few hours, there may be some redness, a tiny sting afterwards, and possibly some sensitivity. However, these recurring microinjuries have the potential to create scarring, irritation, and inflammation over time. Instead of improving sensitivity, they can make it worse. Additionally, under certain situations, they allow bacterial or even fungal infections, which flourish in warm, humid conditions. The worst thing? Many men believe that their discomfort indicates a problem with their hormones or nerves, but in reality, they simply need to change their approach. It shouldn't hurt to masturbate, and if it does, it's not a sign that you're broken. It's an indication that your strategy needs to change as your body does. What can you do, then? Be gentle first. You are no longer 25. It's not a weakness either. It's an excuse to be more mindful of and respectful of your body. Use a high-quality water-based lubricant at all times, not petroleum jelly, not spittle. In addition to preventing ripping and lowering friction, the right lubricant also helps maintain sensitivity over time. Third, take it gradually. You're not in a race against time. Connection, not perfection, is the key here. This period of life isn't about having less pleasure, I frequently remind my patients. Better enjoyment is the goal, wise enjoyment, the kind that appreciates the years behind it and respects the body. Changing the way you touch yourself is not a sign of weakness. In actuality, it has power. Instead of fighting your body, you're learning to work with it. And at this age, that's what true manhood looks like. Not avoidance, but awareness. If irritation and friction are indicators that you can sense danger, what about the threats that you cannot? What if I informed you about a secret danger that affects your brain rather than your skin? One that subtly teaches your body to completely stop reacting to closeness in real life? We're going to investigate that next. And I can assure you that it might even alter your perspective on how you approach pleasure in general. The third risk is desensitization. He sat in my office looking defeated despite being 64, intelligent, healthy, and still working part-time. "I can't feel anything like I used to, Doc," he added. "I can go there by myself, but it's not the same with my wife. I have no idea what is wrong with me." This is more common than you might think. Furthermore, circulation and low testosterone aren't the only factors. There are moments when it comes to what I refer to as the nervous system's quiet conditioning. You see, when a guy repeatedly masturbates in the same manner, using the same grip, rhythm, pressure, dream, or screen, the body and brain start to associate pleasure with that particular pattern. It resembles digging a long trench in the earth. It takes the same route each time you pour water. It eventually loses the ability to flow in other places. This is known as desensitization in the context of sexuality. Additionally, it frequently manifests in men over 60 as difficulties achieving arousal with a partner, the requirement for greater intensity to achieve the same effect, or trouble climaxing without setting a highly specialized solo environment. Confusion, irritation, and even embarrassment result from what used to feel natural now feeling like work. It's not a moral failing, though. Even the medical one isn't one. Neurological conditioning is the cause. Fortunately, it is possible to unlearn it. Start by altering your self-care routine. Change the pace. Modify your hold. Investigate various positions. Instead, than always depending on outside stimulation, try using your imagination. Slow down, above all else. Take your time releasing. Give yourself permission to explore. You can restore sensitivity by providing stimulus and variety in the brain as well as the body, and this is what I advise each patient who faces this challenge. There is nothing wrong with your nervous system. Simply put, it has been overtrained in one area. Shame is not what it needs. It requires time, patience, and permission to reset. By exercising differently, I've seen guys reestablish a connection with their partners after years of numbness. They didn't require medication or surgery. They required permission to curiously, rather than urgently, investigate themselves. This is a subtle danger, and it's dangerous because of it. Because it may go unnoticed until the gap between you and your partner seems too great to overcome. However, the bridge can be restored. Retraining your response to pleasure, both in solitude and in the company of another person, is the first step. The next concern is considerably more serious if desensitization alters how your body experiences pleasure, because something potentially fatal may be concealed by it. The majority of males tend to ignore it. Furthermore, it frequently goes unnoticed until it is too late. Let's discuss it, because you never know what might happen here. The fourth risk, erectile dysfunction concealment. After delaying it for about a year, a guy in his late 60s finally came to visit me. He had been married for decades, exercised 3 times a week, and appeared fit, but he was carrying a burden. "I can get hard when I'm alone, Doc," he finally acknowledged after some tactful discussion. "However, it simply doesn't work with my wife. I've given up trying." It was a weighty moment. Not because he was broken, but rather because he was unaware of the warning signs his body was giving him. What he believed to be a small intimacy problem turned out to be the first indicator of something considerably more serious: hormonal decrease, blood sugar, imbalance, or possible vascular disease. The majority of guys are unaware of this. Doctors also don't always give explanations. The penis functions similarly to a cardiovascular system barometer. Your capacity to achieve and maintain an erection with a partner is frequently the first thing to change as blood flow slows down, arteries become less elastic, hormone levels fall, or nerve sensitivity diminishes. However, many men believe that everything is okay because masturbation is typically easier on the body, mind, and emotions. They're not there, but they're still working. However, that presumption may be harmful. Sometimes, masturbation might avoid the more serious problems. The same level of physiological and psychological complexity is not needed. Therefore, you can be ignoring early-stage erectile dysfunction that could be an indication of diabetes, heart disease, or falling testosterone while you're managing to stay aroused alone. These conditions are all quite treatable if detected early. In actuality, I would much rather have a patient approach me with these worries at an early stage than wait until a more serious situation arises. Because, with prompt treatment, we may correct many of the reasons of ED without the need for harsh drugs or surgery, improve circulation, and restore hormonal balance. And I want to share this with all men over 60. Needing assistance is not a sign of weakness. Waiting is what's dangerous. Silence is dangerous. It's important to pay attention to any patterns you observe, such as erections that are softer, last shorter, or go away with a partner, but persist while you're by yourself. You should discuss that with a reputable doctor who views you as a complete being, rather than only a symptom. Masking the problem with solo habits just postpones the healing you are completely capable of. You deserve a full life, not a workaround. Now, if this risk is concealed by your hormones and blood flow, the next one is caused by something even more unexpected. Something as basic as your sitting position. Unbelievably, the posture you're in may be subtly harming a vital nerve that influences sensation, pleasure, and the long-term health of your pelvis. I'll show you how to stay away from it. Fifth risk, poor posture causing nerve compression. I met a man in his early 70s a few years ago. He complained of a dull numbness around his groin that had gradually become worse over the previous 6 months when he first arrived. Perhaps his age was finally catching up with him, or it could be a circulation problem. However, following a thorough assessment, I determined it wasn't vascular. It had a neurological component. The offender? Something as seemingly simple as the way he sat. Most men are unaware of how important posture is to nerve health, particularly when masturbating. Many elderly men spend more time sitting, whether in office chairs, recliners, or crouched in silent seclusion. The pudendal nerve, which provides feeling in the penis, perineum, and surrounding pelvic floor, can be gradually compressed by the pressure of sitting on hard surfaces or slouching, even though it may appear innocuous. Numbness, tingling, lack of sensitivity, and even pain during or after sexual activity might result from that compression over time. Usually, it begins quietly. Perhaps there's a weird buzzing feeling, or you feel a little less responsive. However, this can become chronic and more difficult to reverse if ignored. It's annoying since most guys believe that their desire or hormones are the cause of the problem, but it's actually a mechanical one. The good news is that it's simple to fix once you understand it. Awareness is the first step towards the answer. Steer clear of slouching forward or masturbating while seated in rigid seats. Choose a position that supports your spine and pelvis, such as lying down or reclining. By placing a pillow beneath your knees, you can relieve strain on your lower back and facilitate pelvic opening. Additionally, throughout the day, take frequent breaks from sitting. Get up, stretch, and allow blood to flow. As much as your muscles require movement, so does your nervous system. Comfort is not an extravagance, as I always remind my patients. It serves as a kind of defense. Your posture in private reveals a lot about how you're taking care of your long-term health. You allow your body to feel again when you let your nerves to relax. Even while it might not seem like much, these little routines add up. Furthermore, it's not simply physical when you feel numb where you formerly felt lively. It affects your feeling of self-worth, your confidence, and your masculinity. Although position can subtly influence feeling, the next danger delves into something even more subtle, which many men resort to when they're bored, stressed, or lonely. At first, it can appear innocuous, even beneficial, but eventually it could turn into a secret emotional trap. Let's discuss what occurs when masturbation ceases to be a physical activity and becomes your exclusive means of escape. Using it as your sole emotional outlet is risk number 6. I once sat across from a man in his late 60s who observed almost casually, "Some days I just get tired of feeling things. I can turn it off by masturbating." He wasn't discussing lust. He was discussing loneliness, tension, boredom, and the numb ache in the chest that arises when no one calls or checks in and the days become monotonous. And I could relate to him since masturbation becomes more than just a physical relief for many men over 60, particularly those who are retired, widowed, or living alone. It turns into a form of escape, a means of controlling feelings that are too difficult to bear. Really, you're not pursuing pleasure. Relief is what you're after. You're making an effort to reduce the noise. Actually, by reducing cortisol levels, self-pleasure might momentarily lessen stress. It produces a short chemical cocktail of prolactin, oxytocin, and dopamine, which are feel-good, safe, and even affectional hormones. However, it can gradually become a kind of avoidance if it becomes the sole way to express emotions. You numb the deeper emotions, such as sadness, grief, frustration, and even restlessness, with sensation rather of confronting them. Additionally, something that begins as a coping strategy might subtly turn into a dependency. It may go unnoticed until you stop going to social events, avoiding calls, or losing interest in activities since it's more convenient to stay at home and experience that fleeting sense of control. Let me be clear. Needing consolation is not a sign of weakness. Men of all ages require strategies for managing emotional stress. However, if your sole emotional instrument is masturbation, it might be time to add more to your repertoire. Take baby steps at first. Speak with someone, a support group, a friend, or perhaps a counselor. Get your body moving. Step outside. Establish new routines that don't solely involve being alone. Discover fresh beats that make you feel more than merely distracted. Even though orgasm may feel wonderful, it cannot replace a sense of purpose, communication, or a connection to something greater than oneself. You are entitled to a life that provides you with more than just temporary respite. You are worthy of emotional fortitude, and range is what gives you power. The capacity to react with choice, rather than habit, and to feel completely. Such insight carries a profound masculinity. The next danger is one that can subtly burden you physically, even though emotional escape can subtly deplete your soul. The majority of males never anticipate it until they begin to experience a persistent heaviness between their legs. Let's discuss the consequences of having too much of a good thing and how to regain equilibrium in your body. The seventh risk, shame or guilt. He was a clergyman who was 72 years old, gentle and considerate. His eyes fell when we started discussing his sexual health. He lowered his voice. Then he said something that will always stick in my memory. "I still do it occasionally, Doc, and then I feel like I did something incorrectly. I am unable to even look in the mirror." Most guys are unaware of the depth of that type of silent shame. It isn't always about your actions. It has to do with your ingrained beliefs about it. Masturbation was portrayed as sinful, weak, or wicked by many older men, particularly those who grew up in profoundly religious or conventional homes, rather than as a personal act of self-care. Long after you stop hearing them, those messages remain in your mind. Decades later, I still encounter men who are plagued by guilt. They've never discussed it with their doctors, they don't discuss it with their friends, and they've never really asked themselves if that guilt is real. It festers instead. They experience a fleeting sense of comfort every time they touch themselves, which is followed by hours or even days of internal torment. It damages their self-image rather than their physical health. I want you to hear this very clearly. Taking care of your body is not a sign of weakness. Desiring comfort, connection, or enjoyment is not morally wrong. Intimacy can be more difficult to find in this later period of life, yet it is still necessary. When done mindfully and with respect, masturbation is only one technique to take care of your mental and physical well-being. It's not a defect, it's not a failure, it is a human. However, there may be serious repercussions if you have harbored guilt for years, even in silence. Persistent shame can cause your neural system to malfunction, raise cortisol levels, and even reduce your body's ability to experience pleasure. Feeling undeserving of the very things you were born to experience, touch, joy, and closeness, can undermine your self-esteem and negatively impact your relationships. What is the first stage in the healing process then? It doesn't alter your behavior, it's altering your perception of it. That occasionally entails speaking with a therapist, particularly one who has received training in sex-positive or older adult care. Sometimes it entails mentally rewriting the story, substituting compassion for judgment and thankfulness for guilt. You're not damaged. You're not filthy. As a man, you have needs, desires, and a backstory, and you're free to keep it all without feeling guilty. Guilt can be a burden on your heart, but the danger we're going to discuss next is one that is even more physically taxing. Literally, it is a physical pain that gradually gets worse. Furthermore, a lot of men are unaware of it until the discomfort becomes unbearable. Let's discuss what happens when your body begins to communicate that it needs to rest. The 8th risk: congestion of the pelvis. A man in his late 60s visited me not long ago with an odd grievance. "I don't know how to describe it exactly," he said, "but down there's this dull, heavy ache. Not very sharp, not intolerable. Simply put, continuous pressure. There's a strange feeling." His prostate exam was negative and he had ruled out infection. However, his response provided me with all the information I required when I inquired about his habits, specifically the frequency of his ejaculations. He claimed that after retiring, his days became more relaxed, spent more time at home, and had less structure. And he discovered that he was using masturbation as a coping mechanism for stress and boredom. Twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day rather than occasionally, he told me it helps me sleep. It provides me with a task. However, I don't feel well lately. We refer to what he was going through as pelvic congestion, blood and pressure accumulation in the pelvic area as a result of frequent, repeated stimulation without enough recovery time. The tissues and blood vessels in the pelvic floor may become irritated and inflamed if ejaculation occurs too frequently, especially over an extended period of time. Your testicles may feel heavy, your pubic bone may ache deeply, or you may experience an inexplicable, persistent soreness. Morality has nothing to do with this. It has to do with equilibrium. Your body requires recovery time, particularly as it ages. The systems that control hormone release, blood flow, and muscle contractions are more sensitive now than they were 25 years ago. That does not imply that you are weak. You're smarter, after all. And that insight allows you to pay closer attention. Your body is requesting space, rhythm, and moderation if you're feeling that dull pelvic heaviness or even a sense of exhaustion or tension after frequent masturbation. A few days between sessions is ideal for the majority of men over 60. Recovery is just as important as activity, not because something else is wrong. Additionally, keep in mind that sometimes less is more. Repetition does not increase pleasure. In actuality, feelings frequently come back stronger, more vivid, and more satisfying after you give your body time to rest. That dull ache is not something you have to endure. You don't have to ignore your body's subtle cues or force yourself to endure discomfort. Occasionally, a slight alteration in timing can have a significant impact on your emotions, on a sexual, emotional, and physical level. The next risk we'll look at begins at the cellular level, even though pelvic congestion is a signal your body sends from below. And it's especially important if you're still thinking about becoming a father, because it is possible to do so even if you are in your 60s or 70s. However, you'll want to learn how this next habit might be subtly hurting your chances. The 9th risk is the possible influence on the quality of semen. When he entered my office, he was 61, recently remarried, and brimming with quiet enthusiasm. He informed me that he and his wife had been trying for a child. We're optimistic because she's younger. However, nothing has changed in the past 6 months. He was not in a panic. Not just yet, but his hope was weighing heavily on me, and the need to fulfill it. Examining his labs and way of life, everything appeared to be in order. Healthy hormone levels. No serious health concerns. However, he hesitated when I inquired about his ejaculation habits. "Quite frequently," he said. "Daily, occasionally more. It eases my tension, and I reason that the more, the better." It is a widely held belief. It's not quite that easy when it comes to fertility, though. You see, most men are not harmed by frequent ejaculation, but it can momentarily lower the quality of semen, especially sperm concentration. This implies that even though your body is creating sperm, it might not be allowing enough time for each sample to replenish at the best possible rate. This can be more important than most people think, particularly for men in their 60s and beyond, when their natural sperm production is already beginning to slow down a little. This is not to suggest that ejaculating every day will ruin your ability to conceive. Absolutely not. However, timing is important if you and your partner are actively attempting to conceive. Quality is important. It may surprise you to learn that moderation can actually increase your chances. Studies have indicated that the highest sperm concentration and motility tend to occur during an abstinence period of 2 to 5 days prior to attempting conception. It's about allowing your body to replenish its resources and function at its peak. At this point, knowledge turns into power. Fathering children is still completely possible for many older men, and a lot of them do. However, it necessitates knowing how the body works today rather than how it did 25 years ago. Desire isn't the only factor in fertility. It has to do with timing, biology, and developing deliberate habits. Therefore, think about changing your routine if you still have the desire to create life, or even if you just want to preserve the possibility. You don't have to refrain indefinitely. Simply give your body time to get ready, heal, and produce what's required when the time is right. And keep in mind that you have more than just physical capacity to create life. It's sentimental. It's vivacious. It represents the vitality that remains within you. The last risk, however, is one that almost every man faces, whether or not he is attempting to conceive. This risk is specific to the goal of fatherhood. It takes time for it to manifest in your body. Your brain is where it begins. Additionally, it can alter your perception of women, yourself, and the definition of intimacy itself if you're not careful. Let's discuss it. Number 10, risk. Detachment from reality. One man in his early 70s told me something with amazing candor. He clarified, "It's not that I don't want intimacy with a partner. The reason is that I no longer find real life to be fulfilling. I have no idea when it took place. I simply lost my enthusiasm for genuine connection." I remembered that moment because he was talking about something more subtle than low testosterone or erectile dysfunction, and more harmful in many respects. Over time, real-life touch, scent, voice, and emotion simply couldn't compete with the fantasy and carefully calibrated intensity of pornography that he had unknowingly trained his brain to respond to. You see, the human brain is extremely sensitive to stimulation and novelty, particularly the male brain. The brain begins to modify its reward system when it is repeatedly exposed to extremely arousing and unrealistic content. It is drawn to the dramatic, the extreme, and the impossibly difficult, and gradually it ceases reacting to the organic, slow tempo of genuine human connection. Men over 60 are particularly at risk, because the temptation to retreat into a digital world can intensify as life slows down and loneliness sets in. That is not judgmental, just comprehension. No screen rejects. They don't need to be vulnerable. They provide you with a steady amount of stimulation. However, they frequently steal your presence, your sensitivity, and your capacity to be profoundly affected by something genuine without your knowledge. What starts out as a straightforward visual aid can develop into a dependency that hinders emotional and sexual connection. In real life, you might get bored with things that used to make you happy. Even unconsciously, you might begin comparing partners to pictures that were never real in the first place. Here's the good news, though. It is possible to reverse this type of disconnection. Your brain is malleable, which implies that it is subject to change. It can be retrained. Begin by avoiding artificial content for a while. When at all possible, replace it with memories, creativity, and genuine human interaction. Go ahead and read, think. Allow desire to grow without expecting it to be gratified right away. Allow yourself to rediscover intimacy's deeper, slower layers. You don't have to spend your life confined to a screen. It's not too late to experience a genuine emotion once more. Sometimes what you remember, feel, and wish you could experience again are what arouse you the most, rather than what you see. After discussing these 10 hidden risks, neurological, hormonal, emotional, and physical, we must now address one more topic, because it's only half the story to know the risks. What if you could actually undo a lot of the harm, restore blood flow, and rekindle the vitality you believed you had lost in just 7 seconds a day using a natural, easy method? I want to show you precisely that next. Conclusion: you now understand. After age 60, masturbation is neither good nor bad. Black or white isn't the answer. It's a tool. Additionally, the way you use a tool determines whether it gradually weakens you or strengthens you. 10 actual risks have been discussed, ranging from desensitization and social isolation to nerve damage, guilt, pelvic congestion, and even a detachment from reality. These are not intended to frighten you. Their purpose is to awaken you, to raise your awareness and grant you permission to look after yourself better. Because it's not about giving up things at this point in life. The key is to do them in a different way, with greater wisdom, greater care, and greater intention. Your body is still reacting. Your desire is still important. Additionally, you can turn your personal habits from a source of shame to one of strength by making a few minor changes. Stay with me if this conversation resonated with you, because what I'm about to reveal might hold the secret to rekindling everything you believed you had lost. I've taught hundreds of men this easy, natural technique, and it might make you feel different in the morning. Let's discuss it.